however much they might enjoy their salary package and the power they have, they actually feel really good if they can help a young person along the way.
Because sometimes, people think that they are after this, and as you rightly mentioned, that sometimes that luck factor or that opportunity might not be available.
So probably that's why you will also find a lot of this non-premium content on Fanport.
They basically have a couple of screens and then they showcase different kinds of innovation while the game is happening.
The way ad is being served to consumers is evolving.
If it doesn't happen, you can actually make it happen. I do think in today's world, you mentioned LinkedIn, there are other ways. You can just email people.
Working in India gives you a really good sense on the economics of things. I think everything is like looked at.
I think that's most important part. Like if you have really seen someone do that great work, appreciation is the least I think one can do. So thanks a lot everyone for joining in the episode 6 of the PA podcast. And thank you to our speakers, Riddhi, Imran and Suhail, for taking out the time and joining us. And the idea of this session is that what all career opportunities are there in sports media and broadcast side of things. And this is one of the most important aspect of the sports industry, simply because of the amount of money involved, right? And in India, broadcast contributes almost, like depending on the league, anywhere between 70 to 80%. I know it's more equitable in the Western world, where sponsorship and match day revenue also like contributes fairly high, right? So without further delay, let's start with basic intros. So Suhail, we can start with you and then we can go to Imran and Riddhi.
Sure. No, I'm very happy to join. So my name is Suhail Khan. I presently work at Formula E. It's a motorsport FIA World Championship, first fully electric championship. I've been with Formula E now for close to 8 months. I work in the media rights team doing strategy and planning. My background has been quite heavily in media rights over the last few jobs, I would say. Previously, I've been with broadcasters, working on the acquisitions and partnership side. And now I'm sort of with the rights holder, but staying within media rights. And obviously to sort of with the topic of today's session, I began my career back in Mumbai, working in sports and working at the time in public relations, and then moving to sponsorship. So I've been in sports now for 10, 12 years, and really excited to chat with these distinguished gentlemen and friends I have on the call in Imran and Riddhi.
Thanks a lot, Suhail. Welcome. And Imran, if you can please briefly introduce yourself.
Thanks. Despite what Suhail says, I'm not a distinguished gentleman, but I'm editor of Sport Business Media. Sport Business has been around about 25 plus years. Essentially, we cover news, data, analysis on the business of sport. Our users, our subscribers might be rights holders like, say, UEFA, or a broadcaster like Sky, or an agency, which sort of works between them and adds value in the midst, like an IMG, for example. I've been at Sport Business for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was mainly working in journalism, in corporate communications. I also do creative writing, right, for the theatre and things. Sport's been a passion throughout, really, my life, as far back as I can remember. My 7-year-old is sitting across me having his breakfast, and the passion is there in him as well for sport. I think that's just something that's in the bones, in the blood in some way. And that's perhaps something we'll get into later. My view is that if you want to be in this industry, you kind of have to have the passion for sport. We'll get on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the most important uniting factor which is there, whosoever is working in this industry. So I absolutely agree on that. Riddhi, if you can please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Simon, for having us on the panel. And thanks, Imran and Suhail, joining in so early in the morning from Europe. So, hi, I am Riddhi. I currently work with Bacom in Sports, so mainly in their content acquisition and strategy team. I have a total of around 4.5 years experience in the sports media industry, couple of years back at Star Sports. So I got into the sports industry by a random interview call, which I got to happen like 4 years back. And as you might be aware, like Indian MBA colleges or whatsoever other colleges, we do not have sports specific companies visiting our campuses. So it's a bit difficult. But yes, when there are multiple opportunities out there, and whosoever is looking to make a career in the sports industries, yeah, can give good insights into that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone, for introducing yourself. And again, welcome to the podcast. And see, I think one thing Imran spoke about the passion part, I think very, very important. But other than that, sometimes, like where all of you are in your career journey right now, as you mentioned in your intro as well, it didn't start from there, right? It has, like many times, like there is this phrase which I really appreciate, like let's say man plans but God laughs, right? So how has that journey been? Because sometimes we plan that in 3 years, 5 years, this is a very important MBA question as well, or where are you interview question, right? That where do you think yourself 5 years down the line? But sometimes where we are exactly 5 years down the line is very, very different, right? So if you can take us through your journey in terms of a few lucky breaks, how you have navigated your career journey so far, and what have been those defining moments. If you can share those, Simran, we can start with you, and then Suhail and Riddhi. So if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you when, about the God laughing about plans. I guess a loose equation might be luck, is preparation meeting opportunity. That's another cliche that's bad, but I think there's a lot of truth in
Yeah.
it. And so, again, the sport business role came up 3 years ago. I had worked as a sports journalist a little bit, but it was just the right time that it came up. And I think that my experience to that point prepared me enough and my knowledge to be able to get the role. Of course, once you're in the role, then you have to keep growing. A lot of people, I think, are under misconception. Once you're in, that's it. In fact, that's pretty much where the journey starts.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, we can go into the specifics about what's the best preparation to get into the sports industry. Is that what you're looking for now, or do you want to get on?
No, we will definitely go to that as well. But rather than like more important than that, I think, because sometimes people think that they are after this, and as you rightly mentioned, that sometimes that luck factor or that opportunity might not be available, right? I might be let's say the best, that's a strategy guy in when it comes to media rights acquisition. But if there is no property like IPL, my talent will be wasted in India, right? So we will definitely go into the preparation side of it, but currently, like if you can mention those, like how you have navigated your journey. So
what I think I've always done is within the job that I've been in, work my hardest, but outside of that, continue to gain knowledge to get skills, because you can't, it's out of your control what opportunities, as you said, there might be.
absolutely,
You control how you can build up your skill set, how you can build up your experience, and then you've got to keep your eyes open. I was rather randomly browsing on LinkedIn when I saw the job opportunity, for example, sport business. I think they've got better at targeting their ads, but actually at the time, their recruitment wasn't that good. So again, you can have all the skills and all that, but you've got to keep your eyes open. You've got to be proactive.
yeah, absolutely. I think even in that, learning new skill sets, I think sometimes like there was one topic which was I'm not sure about Europe, but it got highlighted in India a lot, was moonlighting and the conflict of interest, right? And I remember once I told my boss that, please don't ask if I am ever like in conflict of interest, because I will always be in conflict of interest, because otherwise I can't learn, right? Just just trust me enough that I won't do anything which is against the ethos of the firm, or which like harms the firm's name or reputation in any which way. So yeah, I think that's, and we will come to, I think, LinkedIn as a platform as well, because I think that's an important one which we haven't explored in any of the podcast topics so far. So we will definitely come to that. So Suhail, if you can take us through your journey.
Yeah, no, sure. And maybe like I'll give a sort of a quick anecdote, I think, which speaks to very, very well to this. When I was doing my master's program, we had about 68 or some big number like this, guest faculty in the program. These people usually were coming from the industry. They were working at good, decent levels. And the only common thing across all of their stories was the same thing, is that they set out doing something, chasing A, but then something happened and that turns them towards B, and then now they're so successful in B, and then they are where they are, right? So I think
Yeah.
I do agree with the sort of the overall point. Personally, for me, I began doing, like I said, I began my career in public relations. I was working at an agency, and I had IT clients, and I was having to read up on subjects and topics like data center, and I'm not an engineer, and I can't be a couldn't even be close to one. I was terrible at all things technical and heavily academic growing up, and
Sorry to interrupt. I'm an engineer. I suck at technology. So
right, makes me feel better. But so when I was sort of doing this job for about 8, 9 months, I realized that look, I actually do like sort of doing public relations. I understand sort of how that works, but the subject that I'm working with is so uninteresting to me. And I just had sort of this clarity of thought for a moment, right? That, well, what if I could work on a subject that I actually might like? And then sort of I just looked into my mind, what are the subjects that I like, that resonate with me? And sports has always been one. I used to play. I've been playing sports all my life. I was a massive sports nerd when it came to following sports and sort of all things like that. And so it was just like, well, how about I try to find out if there are any PR agencies around who have sports clients. And I think it's just was this moment of clarity of thought. I made some calls, and I came across an agency that did have sports clients, and I sort of showed up at their door and just said, well, look, I've been doing this thing for a few months, and I would love to sort of now work on some sports clients. And then it was just, to Imran's point, the opportunity was there. I could have sort of knocked on this door, and they could have not have an opportunity for me, and maybe I would have gone back to working on some other terrible clients and not be where I am today. So no, I think it's to Imran's point also. I think sort of opportunity needs to be there. You need to have your eyes and ears open to be able to spot those opportunities.
yeah,
But I guess, yeah, if you have the clarity of thought already on what you're trying to do, then of course there are certain steps that you can take to unlock the opportunity. But sometimes, like I said at the beginning, I think it's I've always heard this, that, oh, someone is trying to chase A and then they sort of land up at B. So I think
yeah.
it's interesting how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that clarity of thought is also about, like, because personally for me, I was working in, again, although you are trying to go from PR to PR, I was working in a very unrelated industry, like which was oil and gas, and I was doing decently there, but again, like after some point in time, the disillusionment happened, and I was thinking of what to do, and the same thing, like nothing else, but the simple thought was that I will have to work for, like, let's say, next 37, 38 years. I was around 23 back then. And let's forget about thriving. Where can I survive? And again,
Mhm.
sports was the only answer. And with that thought, I started taking those initiatives, was ready to take pay cut, all those things. And then things aligned. Like, I think again
Mhm.
that the point you were mentioning around point A to point B, or what you are trying to do, I think the Steve Jobs quote of, that looking forward, you won't be able to connect the dots. But if you have trust in the process and believe in your
Yeah.
skill sets, I think looking backwards, you will be able to connect the dots.
Yeah, I like
So,
that. It is interesting.
so yeah, I think you mentioned about, like, let's say from PR you started, you came in the sports industry, and from there, how did you land up in, let's say, Formula E?
Sure. I think to Imran's point also, I think that was just a beginning point, right? I think then you had to continue learning. I think that was the sort of the entry point of it. And sort of working in PR for several years. And I think it was I was very fortunate with the timing of things. I began working in this agency that I mentioned. The name was Ad Factors PR. These guys helped build the IPL. They used to have the account for BCCI and all these properties. I think it was like a very good timing. 2013 is when I started working there. And that also was sort of this inflection point in Indian sports industry. So previously, we only used to have the IPL as our only professional league, which is
Yeah,
also so different to the rest of the world, right? These guys have had the NBAs, the NFLs for like, I don't know, a century or 80, 90 years. And so with the Premier League as well. I think for us, Premier League was our only property, and Indian Premier League, and there was only what 6, 7 years old at that point. But in
Yeah.
2013, I think also the interesting thing that how it happens, Fox and Disney were together in a merger in the whole of Southeast Asia. Fox then bought out rights from Disney and then came to India in its own capacity. Then we grew up seeing ESPN and Star Sports together, right? And then and
Yeah.
Fox came to market directly away from Disney, and then they rebranded Star. If you remember, there was this massive rebranding. Dhoni became big part of this entire marketing campaign, etc. And Fox then decided to really grow a multi-sport culture in the country. They really pumped in a lot of money, and as part of this multi-sport culture drive, then came about franchise leagues. So there was obviously this PHL hockey league back in the day, but I think Fox then with this property sort of Hockey India League came in, and I remember we did a project at that point with Star Sports and Hockey India League, and then the very next thing was Pro Kabaddi, and then there was the ISL. So I think I was just at the right time where all of these leagues sort of were just spawning up, and then I got an opportunity to walk across all of them. And I think at the end of this journey, I think in 2016 or something, maybe 2015 already, I'd already worked on all these leagues, and I was just sort of becoming very clear in my mind that working in public relations, what's really happening is when all the deals are done, when all the businesses are established, I'm being brought in as a way to amplify this. And I felt I had more to contribute in the process before. And as a result, I was just talking to people, what should I do? How can I navigate myself to a different position? I did not have a business degree at this point, and luckily I sort of had loads of good resources at that point. And then, well, they suggested that it might be a good opportunity for me to go and get an education in business as a way to sort of like navigate myself to that point. And then I did a master's program in the US, and just as a way for me to sort of like first get to sort of what is the pinnacle of not Indian but global sports
Yeah.
business, right? Is the sort of the US sports industry sort of. So one was, how can I get to that point, and then how can I also personally move away from sort of this public relation console and go towards the business side of things. And when I was doing this master's program, I was sort of again hustling, going out, speaking to everyone possibly I could. And because I'd worked in this agency sort of background, the next easier sort of pathway for me was to land with another agency. And so I did. So I
Yeah.
began working with Ascendant. Ascendant was part of Relevant Group. Relevant Group organizes International Champions Cup. I don't think it's happened for a few years now, but this was international preseason. Well, European clubs were being brought into the US to go around the country to play some preseason tournaments and matches. So I started to work at Ascendant. Ascendant was a sponsorship agency under the umbrella of Relevant Sports. So their job was to go out and sell sponsorship for International Champions Cup, to manage those sponsorships on a season basis. So sort of like, because I'd worked in agencies before and I was out sort of hustling, I got in from public relations to sponsorship. And when I was
Nice.
working within sponsorship space with Ascendant, I started to develop some ideas and thoughts, and Riddhi knows a lot about them. Maybe Imran does too. I talk a lot about. There was this highlight zone concept, and I was building sort of towards this idea, and this idea was highly rooted in media rights and stuff like that. And so I was just going around pitching this idea to Relevant Sports, where like, would you like to build this platform? And then sort of one thing happened, and then eventually I was pushed towards the zone in New York with this little recommendation on my head that this guy knows a little bit about media rights, and it could be good for you to talk to them. And then the zone essentially took a chance on me. I had no media rights experience, but sort of I've been doing some thinking and some ideas on media rights, and they said, well, we can't invest in your business and your ideas, but if you'd like to join us in our media rights team, then we can give this opportunity. And once I came in, I think it was just like, this was the right fit. I think it felt immediate. So that I'd been transversing through this different kinds of functions and eventually landed in media rights. And then it was a sort of hand to glove fit. And now this is my third or fourth job in media rights. And there's definitely a space that I can see myself remaining.
And that's very, very interesting. I think because generally, like, I have had friends, or they are still my friends, who are in the PR side of things, but there are very few people who be open to opportunities, right? That's, I think, be open to the opportunities, and then the luck factor, which I think more or less whosoever has made it mentioned it, including myself. So I think that's very interesting, like how you have navigated it. I think it can be a very good case study for people who are
Wow.
like,
Okay.
let's say, yeah, it can be, right? Because the PR is where like you are, as you rightly mentioned, that you are trying to help others propagate their business and things like those. And from
Right.
there to coming on the completely other side, right? Which is not very easy most of the times. And people keep building on the same. So I think that jumping the hoops part and education, the importance of education in that, I think
Yeah.
that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if
So
I'll add like one quick thing, that because obviously, like, when you talk about such a long journey in such a short period, you miss out all the key points in between. I think the key point that I would like to drive, if you're trying to use this as a way to help people and how they can sort of, I think the key part in all of this was talking to people. I think,
yeah,
and I mean, Imran, correct me if I'm wrong, if that's the case in Pakistan also. Definitely in India, this was and still is not as appreciated. I think people still don't understand and value the concept of just, I had no agenda conversation. That I have no agenda with you, I have no business with you, but I'm just going to pick up a conversation with you, and I'm going to try to see how we can sort of learn best from each other. And in the Western world really supports and this sort of concept. So in this entire process, you won't believe how many incredibly senior, important people I wrote to them, and they were just open to having a chat. I think like none of this could have happened, I think, if that wasn't there. So I
yeah,
think one is if you're talking about India, I think like people who are at high levels in India, I think they need to be open to be giving this time to people, in
yes,
just talking to them without any agenda. And I think it's extremely important because you never know where someone lands up, right? And I
yeah,
think loads of people, when something comes into their inbox, will look like, well, this person is like young, XYZ, and has no experience, blah blah blah, and sort of like they skip over their messages. So you never know where this person might land up in the future. So I think like take time to talk to anyone who reaches out to you. So that's on the people who are in the position to be able to help people. And on the other side, people who are reaching out, make sure that you reach out in the most coherent way possible. Don't waste someone else's time. Write good messages. Reach out to, I think if you establish a relevance, if I reach out to Imran, and sort of I've read Imran's story, and then sort of when I reach out to him, I make it very worth his while. He reads this little message and he feels like, okay, this guy's knows what he's talking about. He's not sort of reaching
yeah,
out to me and talking about, I don't know, how to organize swimming competitions in, I think so. I think if you don't waste people's time also. I think like, do be good about in who you're reaching out to and sort of how you establish connect with them. I think like that's the most important thing. None of those things would have happened if I didn't reach out in the first place to many people. And secondly, if people didn't oblige to me, because I certainly had no experience in lots of these things, and people were open to talking to me. So I think if you're trying to, I think that's the point that I would like to drive sort of through my journey, because all journeys are unique. No one can sort of follow my journey per se.
yeah.
But I think, but if you can do this part, is that reach out to people constantly, but reach out with some relevance, and then doors open up.
I think extremely important point. I really like how you have managed to capture both the sides, because sometimes people who are reaching out also, like, they also have to understand that the other person's time is limited and valuable as well. Because I have been trying to, I didn't used to do it earlier, so I didn't used to accept requests, used to see if that there is some some similarity in alma mater or something like that, that if I know it. And then one day the thought came to my mind that if someone already knows me, they have other avenues of approaching me, right? But if
Mhm.
someone is approaching me through LinkedIn, certainly they don't have any other avenue of approaching me. So then I think I accept each and every request, because if, let's say, it comes to like, if someone is not utilizing your time in the best possible manner, you always have avenues to block them and things like those. So I think that is very, very important. And I used to be the other kind of person, because there is, I think, cultural as well as more than cultural, this schooling system. I don't know like which part of India you and like Riddhi. I come from a like rural semi-urban kind of thing, and there during the schooling process the entire inquisitiveness is eliminated, right? Asking questions is not
Mhm.
encouraged. So
Mhm.
and it was completely different during my education, during my college time, right? So suddenly that it has taken me now almost 10, 12 years to be confident in asking for help, right?
Mhm.
Or asking for going out there, just striking a conversation. But now, once I've started doing it in last 2, 3 years, I think couldn't stress more. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you bringing this point,
Yeah.
driving this point home. So
Mhm.
Riddhi, if we can come to your journey.
So I had the least media experience out of Imran and Suhail. So I just have only 4 years of experience. So prior to that, I was working with PwC in a tech consulting role. So on one fine day, a colleague of mine happened to get a call from Star Sports. And since he wasn't willing to shift from Bangalore to Mumbai, so he referred me. So that's how I landed at Star Sports. The interview process
Awesome.
was really simple, nothing to do much with how the sports broadcast industry works and all those kind of things.
Sorry
So
to interrupt. I hope you are sending some constant gifts to your friend.
not really. We're not in touch now for like 2 years. He shifted to US, so not really.
I think you should.
So couple of years I worked at Star Sports in the content acquisition and the strategy part. So in Star Sports, I was mostly towards the strategy part, not more on the content acquisition side of things because all the major acquisitions and everything were done by the time I reached there. So post that couple of years, I switched to Wacom Meeting. So Wacom Meeting was a very small team when I joined there. It gave me the opportunity to get my hands dirty on multiple things. So it was not essentially strategy, content acquisition. There was something to do with distribution, something to do with product, something to do with marketing. So it gave me the opportunity to try my hands on multiple things. And finally, I settled within the strategy team. It was exciting. The all those new properties were coming up. Viacom meeting was building up as a new sports platform. So it was an enriching experience. It has been an enriching experience in the last 2 years and continues to do so. With the rate the digital is expanding in India, and Viacom 18 at the forefront of it. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because yeah, that's very interesting. Sometimes we get opportunities from we expect the least, right? Like it comes out of random, and then whether you grab it or not, that's I think up to you. So thanks a lot for sharing about your journeys, and I think it should, even if it helps, even if it helps one person, I think our job is done. After that, I think the number doesn't matter, but if someone is really looking for this, I think if they are wanting to, because sometimes people think that, how can I directly get an opportunity with Viacom 18? If I, or in India, or if let's say if they are outside India, how can I be in that media rights team directly? But when you see that, sometimes your path is not as straightforward, right? It goes through different routes, because sometimes people might, like if we take example of let's say Imran, like sometimes they might think that how can I be the forefront of you can say consulting agencies, or will that be the right word, Imran, for you, or
Yeah,
it's research backed agency? Will that be the better one?
yeah, exactly. I mean, essentially, we provide research that agencies use to make their decisions. Agencies.
Yeah, I've used sport business for I think better part of 1 year at Reliance Sports. So obviously the product is great and it really helps. But I think at sometimes many people, some of the audience might not be able to get a chance to, because of the price points, because of the premiumness of the content, and because of the amount of effort which goes behind it. I think that access not everyone might have. But yeah, I think it's very important having used the product. Very important too. I think just one small point. I think in India, many of the organizations don't value the kind of content which is being provided by the research agencies, or so that is something I think which is missing, I can say.
I mean, obviously, I think both of these guys are being so extremely humble. I think with Imran, I think it's an absolute honor to be a co-guest with him. Imran leads and moderates sessions at the biggest global sporting events like
Yeah,
Sportel, and he moderates sessions with sort of the C-suite and CEOs across leading organization. And I mean, it's great to be a co-guest with Imran. It's an absolute honor. And same with Riddhi. I think all of these lists, 30 under 30, 40 under 40, I think like why these lists are absolutely meaningless. because I think someone like Riddhi, I think he's an absolute sort of like being engine in our industry over the last 4 or 5 years. The acquisition that he's worked across, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions across cricket, and so
Absolutely.
if Riddhi doesn't feature in these lists, so I think that these lists are, I don't think they're doing a great job in capturing the people they are. I mean, I've seen his work personally, directly. His analysis is so sharp, so rapid, and so concise that he's very downplaying himself when he says he has the least amount of media experience. But I think in terms of the real dollar value, the contribution that Riddhi has had, I think is incredible. And I'm constantly learning from him. He's constantly sort of like, I could take months and weeks to develop an opinion, and I call Riddhi, and Riddhi has his opinion in like within minutes, and it's so sharp.
Yeah, that's so glad to hear that, Suhail. And I think apart from that aspect you talked about, like let's say reaching out to people, I think this is one thing Indian industry also has to learn, right? Like the appreciation for the good work, you will hardly find it. Like I think that's also very, very important, recognizing people and recognizing their time value, right? That is sometimes people don't do. Like I think that's most important part. Like if you have really seen someone do that great work, appreciation is the least I think one can do. So really, really thanks to you for bringing that out. And I think if someone who is listening to this or whenever they listen, I think it's also very important part, right? Like a little appreciation goes a long way, because I think that shows the kind of character you are, rather than like showcasing the other person. Like Imran might not need, let's say, yours or my appreciation, but it shows our character, right? Rather than that. So I think that is very, very important when you are trying to navigate your career journey, because not only for career, but it shows the kind of human being you are. So thanks a lot, Suhail, for bringing that out. Now I think basically, although like the major experience on this panel is on the absolutely like top of the funnel, where the real dollar, in terms of dollar value, the deals worth billions happen. But like let's say that is one part. Like let's say strategy and media rights acquisition is one part. But if you can throw some light upon what are the career opportunities other than, let's say, the strategy side, that's obviously one. But in the media and broadcast industry, sports media and broadcast, what are the different career opportunities available for people who want to start their career journey? So
Yeah.
Imran, if we
Yeah,
can
I mean,
start with you.
I'll just get onto those specific. Just want to pick up a couple of points made.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Suhail, for those comments. Well, what you saw there with Suhail is, again, brilliant use of people skills.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is very much part of this business. You need to have your knowledge, you need to have your hard skills, but I think the soft skills, it's still very much a people's business, and I think it will remain so. And then you mentioned earlier about, when you were sort of trying to get into this field, there weren't so many resources. Now there are. Well, 10, 20 years ago, there was, the internet didn't quite exist in the same way. I'm not sure exactly YouTube, but you didn't have these sorts of resources. So I think for young people, as many struggles as there are, the internet is just such an incredible resource to learn about careers, to learn about how to do things, use that. I also think, both Suhail and Riddhi kind of had this point in their journeys where something quite random happened and then the door opened. And I don't want listening to think that they can build up their skills, build up the knowledge, but they have to just wait for that to happen. If that happens, great. If it doesn't happen, you can actually make it happen. I do think in today's world, you mentioned LinkedIn, there are other ways. You can just email people. As Suhail said, I think people in positions of power, of influence, who are a bit older, I actually think they really enjoy being useful to younger people. However much they might enjoy their salary package and the power they have, they actually feel really good if they can help a young person along the way.
Absolutely.
And I think you should take advantage of that. Cold call, turn up. I met someone in the film business, and I was asking him, "How did you get into this?" When we're young watching Hollywood, saying, "Oh, we want to be Steven Spielberg," and he literally turned up at a set. I mean, this is 25 years ago, and sort of started following someone and said, I want to make you a coffee today. He said, "What, are you crazy? We've got a film to, you can't get through security." They did that for the rest of the week. By the end of the week, the guy said, "Fine, give him a pass. He can make coffee for me." The next week, he was making coffee for 5 people. 2-3 months into the shoot, he was there helping out on odd jobs, and of course he made his way. Now, that's not to say that would happen for everyone. In fact, today, if you did that, security might just turn you away and call the police. So I'm not recommending that to everyone. But I think the point still stands about making yourself useful, being, persevering, and particularly for industries where, it might be more difficult to get in. There isn't such a set career path. And of course, finding those routes is, I think, just easier, due to the internet. I think sport is a useful metaphor for a career in general. The Olympics are on this summer. Now, in 100 meters, there'll be someone who's spent 4 entire years preparing for essentially 10 seconds. And that just might be 10 seconds. It might be out in the first heat. Their hamstring might go after their 5th step. And that's 4 years into life. And as a metaphor, I think that's useful for us to remember.
Absolutely.
Our industry, that you can prepare as much as you like, but ultimately some things are out of your hands, but that passion has to keep driving. And in fact, it has to keep driving, because I think, Riddhi and Suhail, probably in dark moments, they might think, for the amount of hours I'm putting in, and this relates to your point about appreciation, and the amount of hours I'm putting in, for the hard work I'm putting in, if I had gone into this sector, I don't know, finance, or this, if I was still consulting, I might be earning twice. I don't want to get specific, twice as much as I'm earning, or I might, this, that. I don't know the specifics, but they might have those moments, because I think there is something of a premium, or whatever the opposite of premium is, in terms of sport. You take a little bit of a hit, frankly, despite how much money, despite the fact that the industry is still growing. We might get into specifics of where it's growing, media rights, etc., plateauing a bit. But it isn't the biggest industry in the world. When you actually look at the hard numbers of how much sport is worth, you compare it to, I don't know, this commodity or that area of tech, obviously, it's still relatively small. And so it is that passion for the game, for what you're doing, that sort of has to keep you going through. There's more I could say on this stuff, but we want to move on. In terms of specific roles, look, if we stay to media, if we're sticking in that area, obviously there is producing the media, and then there's what you do with the media. If we could sort of have 2 strands. Might be people who want to go and stay in that hard production side, very interested in tech. Obviously, there's a lot of innovation coming in. Obviously, when you look at things like VR, AR, AI, there's other things which are going to come into our industry more and more to enhance the user experience of how we of how essentially we experience sport through our screens, and the more interactivity there is. Then on the other side, there is this product and media, how we place it on media, how we sell it to various broadcasters who want to show it, how we improve the user experience as well. So there's a wide variety of areas, and again, it's really about finding your niche, which I think is only possible through experience. I mean, we've discussed so far that might have started off being an engineer, but then realized I was going somewhere else, and that's part of the period, of growing up and having a career. You might have your plans, as you said, but things will work out. You'll discover things about yourself. The key thing, I think, when you're very young, is to work as hard as you can and expose yourself to as many areas. Because not only will you work out what you like and where you really want to be, I think more crucially, work out what you can do, where your strengths are. Because often passion, you talked earlier about connecting the dots after, often passion also goes backwards. You're good at something, and then you're passionate. Passionate, you become good. So anyway, I'll let the others.
No, I think that's very, 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 very important points, I think, Imran, and that shows, because at the end of the day, we can, and I think in case of, I'll just say one small thing. I think in case of Suhail, it's not, I think he was also trying, he was knocking on that door, right? On that PR agency on the sports side, right? So absolutely important is that if you really think you are passionate about it, then do something about it. Like, you can't really wait, right? So that's very, very important, I think. Suhail, Riddhi, anything to add on the type of careers which you can make in sports media, apart from what Imran just mentioned?
just gave the gist of it, but to look into specific kind of roles. So obviously there is a strategy and acquisition team that's main part of the media industry. There is an entire revenue function that works. So preparing the pricing, sponsorship packages for the advertisers. There is a dedicated sales team that goes out and sells these packages in the market. There is an ad tech team that is basically the interface between this revenue team and the tech team per se, like creating various kind of ad assets on the platforms
Yes.
and day-to-day operations of it. There's a marketing team, both B2B marketing, B2C marketing. There's a big content team, and within content, many other functions open up. There is a content strategy team, there is a planning and scheduling team, there is the persons who are hardcore producing the cricket matches, producers are there, and there is the broadcast tech team that helps coordinate the signals from the stadiums to our basically a TV or a digital platforms wherever we are watching. Outside of that, there are also some niche roles like syndication, like selling, if you, let's say, acquire the rights for, let's say, the global territories,
Yeah.
and your platform doesn't have presence outside of India. So basically, you need to sell the rights to the other partners locally. So that's a syndication team, typically a small team, 3, 4 people, and that's mostly it. That's what covers the major part of the media industry.
Yeah, I think then it's basically it's just like any other like full stack roles. It's a full suite of roles, whichever flavors
Yeah,
you like. I
it's like
think,
any other major corporate. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
corporate. Basically, the things that you are doing pertains to sports. That's it. Or building sports within like viewership, or maybe building the sports itself, as in Star has done with TKL and IS.
sure. Suhail, anything to add?
No, I think they covered all possible role. I like sort of how Imran put this sort of this the side of sort of like creating the content, and then there is the side of then sort of making this content available across the world. But it's always good. I tell this to some people who also ask me for sort of advice on things like this is go to a company's LinkedIn page, look through what different kinds of roles people have currently, and maybe make a list, and then if you have go and ask people questions on what does this role do, what does this role do. So I think it's also, if you're trying to sort of navigate this towards a job or the career you want to build, you don't know where to start. You have a broad idea. I want to work in sports media, let's say. So sort of like pick 4 or 5 big sports media companies, go through the LinkedIn list of employees, and then you get to see
Yeah,
what different functions exist, and then try to see if you can get someone to talk you through those functions. But yeah, I think essentially they've sort of covered the roles. I think the only thing that I've added is that media rights probably is one of the most niche function within the sporting organization. So maybe like aim broader of like sports broadcasting, and then sort of then narrow down, because
yeah,
specifically media rights, I don't know how many people are there at Viacom, really like 5, 6, and I think it's the same across Star and all of the places too. If you look at the strength of these organizations, they have hundreds of people, and then within media rights, there's always the slimmest team, I would say. So I would just like great, yeah, maybe like aim broader and then sort of narrow down.
yeah. I think that's really helpful. And then I think one point which I wanted to ask for, like, let's say myself, because let's say Suhail, I think you might be the most suited to answer this question in terms of like, since you have worked both in India as well as, let's say, outside India, what are the aspects which are, let's say, similar and which are different when it comes to, and Imran, I'm not sure if you have worked in, like, let's say, in your initial years in Pakistan. So if you can share those experiences as well. So that will be really helpful.
I think what I would say is that operating in a market like India, where every single dollar or rupee spent is super scrutinized, I would say that working in India gives you a really good sense on the economics of things. I think everything is like looked at with such extreme focus. So I usually find that negotiation value for products, etc. I think it's so robust in India. I think there's so much more tighter valuation and tighter negotiation around those things, as opposed to maybe sometimes in the Western world, where money is plentiful, and then sometimes maybe sort of like it's not exactly as much scrutinized and like that. Um, I think it's just I wouldn't say there are big differences between in I think it's just sophistication of industries. I think India is sort of at the beginning stage at this point right now. We are still very driven by federations, and maybe you get a call from one of the ministers who's close to the association that carried this content, etc., etc. And then I think like these kinds of things are sort of not maybe as prevalent in outside. And I think that then there are smaller cultural nuances which differ from country to country. When I worked in the US,
Yeah.
there was different cultural nuances as they are in Europe. I think, but majorly, I think it's just, I think I feel like, yeah, the financial part in India is super strong and super well controlled, and you have to like really convince someone why they should spend any rupee on you. Whereas in the Western world, there is money to go around, and they may be willing to put something on something for 6 months, a year to see how it grows and how it develops. But yeah.
Imran, anything to add on that? Or
Yeah, I totally agree from my sort of limited knowledge. Yeah, I did work a little bit in Karachi, and I'd say that, yeah, by and large, the sort of corporate culture is maybe slightly more advanced in London, in the West. Perhaps that it relates to what you were saying about being rewarded, being acknowledged. That is by and large perhaps more advanced here than it might be in say, the subcontinent. I think in the subcontinent, you're expected, if you're in a senior role, important role, to work very hard. And I think that's something that actually over here is not always expected. So I think that's a quality that will stand you in good stead. Don't worry if you're working very long hours in your 20s. Not that I did particularly, but I think these two young gentlemen certainly do and have. That's a good thing. You don't generally have sort of marriage or kids, so you can do it. I think broadly speaking, though, in terms of India and the rest of the world, I don't need to tell you, there's a lot of focus and attention on India now, and that's to do with geopolitical changes. It's more of a multipolar world. That's to do with a growing economy compared to, by and large, quite stagnant economy, especially when you look at, say, Western Europe, not so much the States. That's to do with population. Now, all of those things generally get rights holders here quite excited. But it doesn't always, as these gentlemen know, it doesn't always translate into actual value on the ground in terms of, and then they might get disappointed. Having said that, I do think things will grow. I think it's a really good time to be a young Indian wanting to work in sport. I'm not sure there's been a better time. So, spirit of optimism. I think you're not in a bad industry necessarily. Again, it's a question of finding your niche, spreading your target area wide, and doing hoping opportunities come up.
I think that's a very important one. And I think I have just one or two more questions. And so one thing, see, again, technology and AI, like basically people are in every conversation, people are now trying to force fit. And you can say this is also in a way force fitting of that. What do you think how tech is going to impact this industry in, let's say, coming years, right? Like it might not be from the perspective of, let's say, media rights side of things, but it might be in the way like how that content is being produced or how it is being disseminated or distributed, right? So are there any major changes which are going to come in 5, 10, 15 years down the line, or it's more of the hype rather than any actual, let's say, threat to some of the current roles, or let's say there will be some new roles which will come up? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can maybe speak quickly on it. So I was just at a conference in Dusseldorf. DFL organizes this really cool event. It's called Sports Innovation. They have a live game playing in the background, and then in front of it, they basically have a couple of screens, and then they showcase different kinds of innovation while the game is happening. Right, what could come in technology and production, etc. I think there was such a big emphasis on AI. I think Imran mentioned about this also at the beginning. Also, sort of this is becoming very sort of crucial and important. So there were so many things that I think currently you talk about localization. So like let's pick a property. Let's talk about like maybe because I was at DFL event, Bundesliga, for example. Now Sony broadcast Bundesliga in the country, and Sony then hires commentators to localize the content in Hindi, etc. And then there were so many solutions out there which were talking about this role taken up by AI, that they localize content via AI in real time, and AI can pick certain tone, pitch, replicate someone else's voice completely. So essentially, sort of they're talking about how you can move from needing to hire commentators, train them, and then sort of get them in the studio and then produce this localized feed. But now AI potentially could do this as well. So there's going to be sort of some changes of the roles that they exist today. But then at the same time, you need people to operate these technologies. You need people to sort of like, so I think it's just a shift. I guess one kind of role shuts up and the other one opens up, but definitely sort of just within sports broadcasting, I feel a lot of the WSC is a good example. They've been doing now AI generated highlights, clipping, etc. for a few years now. Before you would basically employ like a whole army of editors after a live event. They will basically sit down, cut highlights, publish them very next morning. Now all of this work just happens via AI. So I think a lot of that technology from the broadcasting side of thing is going to sort of change how a lot of the jobs look like, but I don't necessarily think that the jobs go away. I think the jobs transform into something else.
Yeah. Imran, Riddhi, anything on that?
Nothing on the like AI side, but definitely on the tech part, the way ad is being served to consumers is evolving. So if you see some like foreign leaks, so basically the perimeter branding it differs from country to country. You see
Yeah.
even in India. So now nowadays you can scan a QR code on your television ad, you can just open the app. So various kind of evolution is like great innovations are being done in this ad tech space specifically. Within the content space, as Suhail told, that automated highlight generation, content generation, VOD content, and all those stuffs are coming up. Uh, Mostly, we don't foresee like AI taking like jobs away from this industry. It's basically some new jobs will be created because of this, and probably replacing the existing traditional ways of working.
Imran?
Yeah, I totally agree with what the guys have said. I think throughout history, every time there's been a major technological leap, people have been very fearful, oh, there'll be no jobs left for everyone else. But, as Riddhi said, Sohail said, actually jobs are lost, but more jobs are created. I think just to add to what they said, what you'll need is a sort of combination of the human and the technical to make sure that, and I think we've seen that in the last 10 years with the proliferation of data. Data is great, but you have to be able to interpret the data, and that comes through an understanding of the human. You can't let the data solely lead your decisions. And I think that'll apply when it comes to tech, when it comes to AI. With someone like Riddhi doing strategy acquisitions, he'll be using Excel. Now, maybe in the next few years, he'll be using Excel plus, say, a Chat GPT or some other large language model or something. Again, it's just, it'll still be you, it's how you use the tool. So AI is not necessarily going to change your job, but you've got to be able to use AI when it properly gets integrated and have those skills. Having said that, I think, if you look at, say, the betting sector, now, sports media rights is sort of generally plateauing. Betting globally has just gone through the roof. It is perhaps the growing sector. That's also because of legalization in the US is really driving that. It's growing in Europe. Now, we might have our moral qualms about betting, and I personally don't think it's the best thing. I think it causes a lot of harm, and I think sports needs to come to some sort of understanding about its relationship with betting. But we'll leave that aside for a moment and just look at the very fact that the tech, the internet, has enabled that over the last 10, 15 years. Before that, to go into a betting shop on your piece of paper, right? You do your slip and all that. Of course, it's totally transformed. Now, got the IPL game on. Within about 5 clicks, I can bet on whether Kohli's going to be out in the next over or something. And that is really transformative. And that tech is only going to become even more integrated in our phones and in the way we experience sport.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's such a good example. I think it's also like from a sponsorship activation point of view. Like, I mean, like you know, Imran, so many of the media rights deals are backed by betting sponsorship, right? They refinance the rights fee that they pay via betting, and then if now you have sort of this such a good integration of the betting product into the live product on the broadcaster already, and that allows the betting companies to sort of see the value directly. Someone sort of the money that they're paying is not just for exposure, but it's like this direct activation, right? And that's sort of increasing their ability to pay more. Super interesting point.
Yeah, I think that's true for not only betting, but I think betting is more congruent category for what we are mentioning. But call to action CTA is something I think that's where I think Riddhi's point around innovation at tech and last I think 1.5 2 years, Viacom 18 has been leading that from forefront in terms of slicing, dicing. IPL as a property which used to be so expensive for any particular advertiser. Now the access point has definitely gone slightly down because of the way they are using technology to facilitate those ads to the consumers in different slices and dices, and I
Yeah.
won't go too deep into that. So yeah, just one point. As of now, whatever we are speaking is from the perspective of, let's say, elite sport, right? That the likes of La Liga, Bundesliga, IPL, Premier League, and things like those. But what do you think? What is the future of, let's say, non-premium content when it comes to the UGC? Obviously, in social media, user-generated content has been going from like one leap, like one strength to strength. It's growing very, very rapidly. But what about these neighborhood leagues? Because of the tech, some of them have come online, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think? What is the scope of monetization, or where do you see this non-premium content? How to monetize it? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but weren't you telling me Riddhi, this time around that the Viacom is showing some properties? What is it, DY Patil League or something like that, hyper local?
We show multiple properties across sports. So yeah, on the monetization of the smaller properties, I think the only player who has cracked the code in India is probably Dream 11. So basically, fantasy D2C revenue is anyway low in India. If you go to US, you go to UK. So for any leagues, D2C revenue to B2B revenue is 50-50 roughly. India is not even 20 right now. Now that
Yeah,
all the leading digital players are going free. So the only potential ways of monetization comes from the D2C stream. If you look at the various D2C streams, there is merchandising. Now, licensed merchandising, as we know, is again a very small market in India. That leaves you with gaming and fantasy, and where probably Dream 11 has cracked the code. We are making 6,000 plus crores in revenue from fantasy, which is huge. Uh,
yeah,
Probably like this is like roughly, I would say, like higher than FanDuel and DraftKings when they operated fantasy platforms back in 2016-17. That's combined of that value. So yes, so probably that's why you will also find a lot of this non-premium content on FanCode because they have found out a way of monetizing them. It might not be huge, probably the twice the size of the largest prize pool that is for that contest. But yes, there is some that is probably the only way right now in India how we monetize like on broadcast like non-premium content on the on ground stuff on ground revenues. Smaller leagues does do see a lot of traction from the betting clients, mainly because betting advertisements is illegal in India, so you cannot put it on TV or digital. So that's the only way they
yeah,
try to generate awareness, and we'll see many smaller platforms like smaller properties getting sponsored by a Puri Match or a Betway or for say Gafa Bet and all those companies. In terms of few leagues like the PHL or let's say the Premier Handball League. So most leagues come up with a franchisee-led model. So wherein they take some money from the owners at the start, which allows them to like finance the properties for the initial few years. And once on-ground revenues and all those stuff kicks in, and that's when they get return on their probably on their investment. But for the initial probably 1 to 3 years, not only have to invest in the operations per se, getting the sport played, hiring stadiums and all those, but probably they will also need a good broadcast. So to reach out to maximum number of people. So smallest properties are investing there also as well.
So, hey, Imran, any thoughts on how to
Maybe
monetize the
Imran, if you have some
non-premium
thoughts.
content? Sorry.
Did you want to go, Imran? I think maybe it's become easier to the production of smaller leagues. Previously, you couldn't really have broadcast of them because you need a big camera setup, etc.,
Yeah,
which is not possible for, I guess, for smaller properties. I think that's become easier, that you have the possibility to put out a live feed. I mean, I could be wrong, and I don't really have a lot of like examples that I can name, but I think there are loads of like very hyper local leagues happening in the country at the moment, that you have these like a district league, or maybe like a local, yeah, short for examples. And these guys are able to now live stream on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then this is possible because now they're able to sort of like, yeah, it's easier. And then once you live stream on YouTube, then obviously you're able to generate some revenue, either by its programmatic ad sales, or maybe in some cases, if you're lucky, you're able to do some direct deals also. So I think, yeah, it's being able to now make content available, which previously was only accessible for massive rights holders who had the money to hire a TV crew, and do the production, and then do the post production, and publish the content. I think that's become easier now. And as a result, I guess they have, yeah, if there's more awareness, they can put the product out, they can monetize it directly via sponsorship, or they could then, with more awareness, then go out, sell on ground sponsorship, and yeah, and things of that nature. I think, yeah, that's sort of, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think like that's just sort of on the hyper local side of things. And I think Riddhi touched upon maybe a tier above that, like sort of I think the handball example that Riddhi mentioned, and things of that nature. And now they have the ability to also then monetize, and yeah, that's definitely a new space.
Imran, anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, like the guy said, content is becoming more accessible, and that's also going to be driven by tech changes. I mean, you can have automated cameras. You have those in many places where you don't even need a camera operator. Things can be seen by those who are really interested in, often niche sports properties. But ultimately, look, we're in an attention economy,
Yeah.
an attention world, and there's more and more things competing for our attention. And so actually monetizing those small properties, I think, will prove challenging, and perhaps increasingly challenging. I think, broadly speaking, we'll continue to see a world where the very top continue to grow, and there's kind of a less and less of a middle, and then the bottom ones, frankly, struggle. And maybe they're just not meant to thrive monetarily. Maybe for those sports, it was always basically a sort of semi-amateur thing, and the last 30 years of pay TV growth has kind of artificially increased them. Your IPLs, your NFLs, your Premier Leagues will be fine. But, even, for example, in Europe, great leagues with great histories like Serie A in Italy have struggled recently to grow, say, their media rights and the overall value of the league. And again, that's part of that squeezed middle. And I think see that more and more.
I think completely agree, other than just, I think one part where my hypothesis is slightly different. Apart from being attention economy, this is also about what you call, like, everyone wants to see themselves more and more. That's how let's say your social media, the instant gratification, it's the age of instant gratification as well. So I think you are absolutely right. The right at the top will keep on growing, but I think the right somewhere in the between will keep on getting extinct. So I don't see very, very bright future for something like a handball league or these kind of leagues which have tried to copy IPL left, right, and center. But I do think that the smaller league, obviously the numbers will be very small, but at the same time, they don't really need, they are not spending that much money on acquiring the rights and things like those. But that will be primarily driven by, like, let's say 4 of us are playing a sport, we want this thing to be recorded, and then it has to go on the social media or any kind of media. So I think there are many startups, what Suhail you were mentioning about, like today a game of cricket can be broadcasted for as little as £100 or 10,000 rupees, right? So I think those, and there are cricket heroes, the likes of cricket heroes, the likes of sport board. So those things might survive, or the companies at least facilitating those might thrive. So I think more or less questions from my side are over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And any last thoughts in terms of
No, I think maybe like just going back to I think the same point. I think it's like to Imran's point. I think either you're so hyper local that almost like your friends and family and everyone you know is watching you, and then you're going
yeah,
to thrive because, like you said, you're almost seeing yourself on the screen, or you are a mammoth like the Premier League or the IPL, etc. And then they continue to grow. I think the guys in between are gonna so struggle for so much for attention, right? Like how are they gonna where they're gonna get this attention from because no one sort of you don't watching sports as the way that you used to. I mean, in India, we became big fans of the Premier League. A big function of that was we all watched TV, and at that point, on TV, the Premier League was distributed as opposed to maybe the La Liga or the Serie A, right? Same with WWE, we became massive fans of WWE because we all were just watching TV, and then this was sort of being
yeah,
distributed on TV. There were rights deals, etc. And now that's not the case. We don't watch content the same way. We don't tune into TV. We don't see what's going on. We go to what we like. And I mean, I'm currently working at a challenger property, right? That Formula E is only 10 years into the business. It's a challenger property. It's not does not have the sort of massive audience built in already. So it's for us, it's this challenge. So we are in the bang in the middle. That's sort of what Imran was talking about. Is that sort of guys on the top continue to grow, but sort of we're bang in the
yeah,
middle where it's not the same that you can just get a good media ads deal, you're on the TV, and as a result people will watch you, right? I think like this is nice thinking to have, but it's not certainly, I guess, realistically gonna pan out this way. So because in between you're in this in middle space, if you're not already a fan, you're not going to seek our content and watch, then I have to push you to watch my content, and then I'm like Imran's point, then I'm just up against everything. I'm up
yeah,
against my friends Instagram feed, I'm up against sort of like TikTok, what's happening, or like all of these things. So yeah, it's true. I mean, it's definitely the case in our world, especially sort of like globally, that sort of properties in the middle are having such a difficult time at this point, and how can they keep themselves relevant, and how do they build this audience? To Imran's point, like the bigger properties are going to continue to grow because they already have a big fan base, and now there's more user generated content on the back of it. It's sort of this circle that sort of continues to grow for them,
yeah,
and how do we break into this circle? How do we get into this consumer attention span? And yeah, it's a challenging position to be in. I don't think there's ever been a time in the world, more difficult time in the world to grow audience for something. Like, at the moment, it's just such a difficult time. But I think it's also at the same time, you just need one moment. You need one thing that cracks into the popular culture, one thing
yeah,
that happens in your sport, something, and you just crack into the popular culture, and then people will seek out your content and then become massive fans. F1 is an example, like, Drive to Survive, it was sort of on decline. Suddenly, Drive to Survive really clicked with people, and now look at sort of where F1 is, the valuation continues to grow. So it's challenging, but you also, I mean, I think it's become it's a nice place to be. I think like people, it's the best content wins. I think it's like that. The best
yeah,
content wins. The distribution is no more the king anymore. If something is incredible, or when people like it, and then when people like it, they start talking about this on social media, etc. And then it leads back to broadcast and watching the content, etc. As opposed to previously where it was distribution led. If I'm being distributed in your country, you're watching me, then that's only going to continue to grow. So I think it's challenging, but at the same time, it's become more about best content wins, and sort of everyone is on the same level playing field. You could be a small property, but if your content is great and you've done something incredible, and then you will break through this sort of like cultural pop culture space, and then it explodes from there. We certainly had a moment at Formula E like that. I'm not sure if you guys came across this, but the Sao Paulo race that happened last weekend. Our driver Sam Bird, he won the race literally in the last lap. That just on the few meters before in the last lap, he managed a massive overtake, and then he won the race, and this has become sort of almost already a watershed moment for us. Sort of done incredible views on social media, and this being shared across motorsport channels, and maybe people who were just potentially only talking about F1 previously. Now they've also like looking at this, and I think something. Yeah, you just need one moment to
yeah,
break into the pop culture space, and then you can really take off.
Yeah,
yeah,
I completely agree with what you say. I think it's a great sort of point to end on. That as much as we can plan, it's kind of what I was saying earlier about sport being a metaphor. That ultimately this is unscripted content, and that's why we keep going to sport.
yeah,
one moment which can change things. I always think back, and the IPL, of course, started last night. I think back to 2007, that first T20 World Cup.
Yeah.
India barely sent a team. I don't think there was Sachin there. I don't think there was Dravid. There's so many. It was a young team, young cap. Some Indian fans couldn't even name some of the team players. And of course, they won on that sort of last ball, or whether I think it was 6 to win or so. So if that 6 goes, I don't know necessarily if the IPL starts a year later, and certainly has the same trajectory, because India were kind of down on the whole T20 format. That moment, one ball can change the entire course of a sport, the history, finance of a sport that's been existing for 150 years or so prior to that. So again, sport, just like life, we kind of live for these moments. Be as prepared as you can be, get as much knowledge and skills, bother people like Riddhi, like Suhail, like me on LinkedIn, on email, wherever, force us to have a coffee with you, but also be open to those moments.
Absolutely. Very important point. Riddhi?
Nothing more to add from my end. So I can't ask Suhail and Imran to watch IPL on Jio Cinema. So
No, you should ask all of us.
Maybe we can, but through piracy. That's something we haven't discussed. That would be a 5-hour discussion at piracy, which is a serious challenge to this whole industry. But again, like many challenges this industry has overcome, hopefully it'll overcome that one.
Cool, great. Thanks a lot once again, Suhail, Imran, and Riddhi. And special thanks to Riddhi, because Riddhi is also part of the core team of Playmakers Arena, for reaching out to both of you, and both of you agreeing. I don't think we have had hosts with more experience so far. Like, yes, like from different areas, but getting people with so much experience and exposure to the life and the world, I think it is certainly going to help people who will potentially listen to this. So thanks a lot on behalf of future listeners as well. Thank you for taking out the time.
thank you, Imran. Thank you, Suhail. Thank you so much for joining us from here.